Hey Maurice, how you doing, man? Sorry it took me a little minute to get started on recording this video, kind of breaking down my thoughts on the lead magnet that you've made. Pardon my voice if I'm sniffling a little bit. I wanted to record this for you earlier this week, man, but started not feeling well. I was like, oh no, like after we had family over and stuff, and not feeling well afterwards. Anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about. I wanted to break down some stuff that I noticed with the lead magnet and give you some really great tips that are going to really help to accelerate this thing to the next level, provide a lot of value to your audience and people who are coming in to your world. Helping the young and powerful release the fire within. I love it. So before we begin working on this lead magnet, I want to share with you just like three major factors that I think are really going to help to make or break this lead magnet creation. Stuff I'm about to share with you. It's stuff that I've learned from people who've created lead magnets that have honestly pulled in like hundreds and thousands of people into their world, introduced people to their brand. And I've also used this myself to get over 2,000 people signing up for just the first lead magnet that I've ever made like 2 years ago, back in 2020. It feels so long ago. So anyway, I recommend that you first listen to these three things that I'm about to share and begin writing down ideas as they come. So like as soon as you hit some inspiration, pause, write it down. I think you'll get the most value out of it that way. And if you can't come up with any ideas initially as you're listening, that's all right, because after I share, these three key points, I'll actually show you like a really cool little hack to come up with literally like hundreds of ideas of content that you can put together that you can use for your lead magnet, and it only takes about like 20 seconds to do. Some super cool stuff. So I should have made it like some little slides or something I'm thinking right now. But anyway, so there are three things to keep in mind when creating your lead magnet, and it's this: you got to make sure. The first thing is you got to make sure you have a clear intention of like who your perfect audience is, and I think you've got a good idea of who that is. Obviously, young and powerful young adults. I think that's kind of like who you're trying to who you're gearing towards. I just wanted to reiterate it and just make sure that you really understand that like you got to have a really good, clear intention of who your perfect audience is, because if you don't have that ahead of time when you're making these, you may actually be attracting the wrong people who you are not able to help, or it's just people who you really don't want to help. That sounds bad or whatever, but there's people out there who are called to serve certain types of people. And I know for me, if someone's not going to put in the work, that's someone that I'm likely not going to work with, because I'm, bam, we got to get to work. We got to get things done. If they're dilly-dallying around, then it's kind of a thing where it's like, okay, you can do that, but you're going to have to work with someone else, because I want to get things done. I want to get you results. And by the way, I love that. You put this together. You're clearly a person who's putting in work, putting in results. So I love it. But if someone were to come to me and I create a lead magnet where it's like, oh yeah, how to do something super easy and not need to do any work at all, and it could all be done for you, and you can go to sleep and wake up and things are completed. It's like in reality, it's like, no, you got to put in work. So that wouldn't be the right person who I'd want to attract. So one way you can go about doing this is literally think about who it is that you would hate to work with. Someone who's maybe old and weak. I don't know. I'm just playing, but who's a person who you actually like would not like to work with. You get a phone call from them one day and you're like avoiding the phone calls. Imagine that. And then think about the complete opposite. Be specific about the perfect person who you would love to work with. You get that phone call, that caller ID coming up on your cell phone. And you're like, oh my, yes, I've been looking forward to talking with this guy or gal. You pick up the phone, you're like, what's going on? And you're immediately feeling better because you're talking with that person. So that's the first thing, making sure you're clear with who you want to work with. Second would be, what is the specific result that this is going to be trying to help people get? Ideally you want to try and think in their head, what are they thinking? So if someone's, walked through a desert and they're thirsty and that they're thinking about water, then you got to ask yourself, like, okay, like what is the water, quote unquote, that you can present to them that when that they'll see it, they'll jump at it. And one way you can figure this out is to ask yourself, like, what is the ideal result that they want? So what is the thing that young adults are wanting? That I know that's kind of broad, but like when you have a more specific person, you can have a more specific result that that they want to have. Another way you can think about this is that your lead magnet, you want it to attract the right person that you want to work with. Similarly, like how like bait attracts certain types of fish, and there's also different types of bait. You can have a live worm, and that'll attract certain types of fish. You can have like little pellets that'll attract different types of fish. So your lead magnet, the type of lead magnet can attract different types of people. So is it going to be video? Is it going to be audio? Can they listen to it? Can they read it? Is it going to be a combination of all those things, or is it going to be a couple things put together? I had some stuff to keep in mind. So that the first thing was making sure you got a clear intention of who they are. The second thing is, what is the result? What's the form of lead magnet that you want to put together? I think words, written word is going to be good because you've already done that. And then the third and final thing is, when you have the idea of who you want to work with and the type of lead magnet that you want to pick, then you can start thinking about, like, what is the language that you can use that they would identify with. This is another strategy that you can use to further refine down the perfect person that you want to work with. So, using terms like, if you were to use terms, not saying to do this, but just as an example, if you're going to use terms like, quote, grow your clout with Jesus, or go from noob to pro in your walk with Jesus, that's going to clearly resonate with one type of audience, as opposed to saying something like, repentance of the world and acceptance of Christ. That's a thing that'll attract a totally different type of person than growing your clout with Jesus would. So that's just another thing to keep in mind, that you got to be aware of. And another little side thing with the type of language you can use, I know that people like us, we're very passionate about the things that we do, and because we're passionate about it, we're very deep into understanding the different terminologies of things, and we get caught up in using big words with stuff. And I mean, clearly, I think these are terms this is terminology that people will understand, but going back on that idea of using like the word repentance and acceptance of Christ, if someone is brand new in their walk with Jesus, for example, they may not totally understand what those terms mean. Like they might know what the Bible is, they know who God is, they know the word Jesus, but words like repentance and Sabbath and tithing, just as examples, that's something that they may understand further on their walk. So if you wanted to appeal to someone earlier on in their walk with Jesus, I would not recommend using words that might go over their head. However, if you do want to appeal to people who are far in their walk with Jesus, then yes, use words that would confuse someone who's earlier on their walk, because you want that person to read that and be like, I don't know what that means, and then they glance over it. But someone who's far in their walk with Jesus, who reads that and they know, like, oh yeah, discipleship, I know what that means, and I want to have better discipleship or something like that, then they'll read that and then they'll be drawn into it. Just another idea of using the right type of quote unquote bait. So, list out terms that you can use that would resonate with your perfect audience, because it will not only will it attract the right people, but it can also deter those who aren't the right people. So at this point, if you still are struggling with ideas of things, I know I haven't gotten into like the details of stuff yet, but if you still want to come up with some ideas for like better crafting your lead magnet, or coming up with different content for different lead magnets, there's this really cool website called Title Generator. I use it for everything. It's fantastic. You can go on here, and I've used this to come up with podcast ideas and just content ideas in general. So let's say I've used this one before, Discovering God's Calling. You plug a term in there, and you can pull a term from the list of stuff we were just talking about earlier. And you can see once you put it in there, it populates a whole bunch of different titles that are very attractive. Like you read it and you're like, oh, that sounds good. Like this, it literally just came up with this. Oh, let's get that out of there. It says, at last, the secret to discover God's calling is revealed. It's like, oh, what, the secret to discovering God's calling? Like I've used that for my own book that I wrote. It's good. It's attractive. Like that right there. Like I want to keep that. I want to save that. Never suffer from discovering God's calling again. Or let's see if we can do young adult Christian. I don't know. That may not work too well. And sometimes grammatically, the titles don't sound that good, so you may have to like finesse it a little bit. So like young adult Christian, it's easy if you do it smart. And it's like, oh, what smart? I want to know the smart way. It's curious. It creates curiosity, drives people in. And then right here, see how these have numbers next to them? 3 ways you can reinvent young adult Christian without looking like an amateur, or 5 incredibly useful young adult Christian tips for small businesses. Shoot, you could even say for small groups, or small churches. But this is great for coming up with ideas of not just what the title's going to be for your lead magnet, but like what your lead magnet can be in general too. For example, 3 ways to master young adult Christian without breaking a sweat. So now what you're going to do is you're going to talk about 3 ways to master whatever the term is there, and you're going to help them do it without breaking a sweat. Or the 5 incredibly useful, boom. Now what you'll do is you'll provide 5 incredibly useful blank tips for small groups or small churches. Boom. So it's like, it's a really cool resource there. Another thing too that works really well when it comes to titles, put the word free in there. 5 or like free PDF in the beginning, and then it says 5 incredibly useful. People love the word free, and people will run to get that. So fortunately, when it comes to your lead magnet, it's based off of the book that you already wrote. So when it comes to ideas, you've already got your book written, so you likely, won't even need to create anything new. You can just pull from what you already have, which is clearly like what you've done. So I recommend what you do is, and it says it right here, 7 power habits. So this is great direction, because what you're doing is you're providing people a framework for them to follow. And 7 power habits. That's great. I've seen people where they say like, the 6 steps to blah blah blah, or the 17 keys to X, Y, and Z. A lot of people have these like proprietary frameworks, or like these recipes that are unique to them. KFC's got the 11 herbs and spices. Coca-Cola's got their secret sauce or whatever. I don't know. And you can turn you can have your book be that framework. And for people, it's just simply plug and play. Just get this result by following these steps, type of thing. Like that's like a very attractive thing. But unfortunately, just giving someone the framework isn't that, like, people won't see it that valuable in and of itself. People, what they love the journey. They love to hear stories, and when you can combine what you're teaching here with a story and a journey, it's going to significantly increase the perceived value of it. Because if someone's like, hey, I got you a flower, it's like, oh, thank you. How much was it? And it's like, well, it was free. And it's like, oh, that's nice. But then if you ask, well, how did you get the flower? You're like, oh, well, I had to fly to Machu Picchu. What? Yeah, I had to fly to Peru. I had to hike Machu Picchu, which took 5 days. I had to ride a camel, and then we ran out of food. I ended up having to eat the camel, and afterwards, I had to sleep under a tent and underneath the stars and stuff, and almost lost my limbs and stuff like that. But at the top of this mountain, that only 5 people have gone to, they have these flowers that are super nice looking, and you're not allowed to take them, but I plucked it because I thought of you, and I had to smuggle it back into the country, and yeah, here it is. But it's free though; I don't have to pay for it. And they're like, "Wait a second, this is a fantastic flat. Don't just say it's free. This is fantastic, So that's what I'd recommend you do for this. I don't recommend going to Peru. I mean, you can if you want, but you got to put a story behind this, and people are going to make it. They're going to be like, "Holy cow! This is really valuable." Because without the story, I've heard of people say it's like without the story, it's kind of like casting pearls in front of swine. That biblical quote. Excuse me. And the reason why is because they don't know the value of what they have, and they can't appreciate it because they just don't know. So after the story, you have your title page, and then you have the story. Have big words. You could say, read this first, and it's like a little paragraph describing the story. After that, then you go through the strategy of the framework. You walk them through it, and each step could be its own page. With a single little paragraph, very short, quickly explaining the topic. And this is going to allow for quick consumption, because this is good. I like that you made it very brief, but it's almost slightly like too brief. It's almost looking at like a table of contents, which is cool. And I like this too. Go from fear to flame. That's nice. But yeah, this looks like a table of contents, which is not bad at all. But there should be a little bit more meat in there. So most of the time, you got people on both spectrums where they're either providing way too much content. They're like, oh, here's my free 200-page book, and it's like, okay, that's too much. Or then you got the other side of it where it's like not enough. There's not enough stuff for people to sink their teeth into. So you can have each of these steps be its own page, short paragraph, quickly explaining the topic. It allows for quick consumption, but it also leaves room for people to want more. Because once you begin to build that desire in them to want to learn more, not only does it lead them to actually finish this material, but they'll actually be at a point where they're like, you know what, I would definitely be down to pay more or pay something to learn how to do this. Because the lead magnets, the power comes from the story, the journey, showing them the strategy, but the strategy just says what they need to do. It doesn't explain how to actually do it. Now your book, on the other hand, that explains the how. And at the end of the lead magnet, you can offer people the book to download for like $1.99, $2. That's anyone can spend $2. You know, it's perfectly fine. They got like some great value from your lead magnet. If they want more, they can spend $2 because those who like the value that you gave them in this lead magnet will move to the next level to buy the book. And once they buy, not only are they now financially invested, but they are invested with their time too. Because normally, like, 95% of people don't actually ever like fully finish reading the books that they get. But with this structure, with the way you do it with the lead magnet, you're more likely to actually have the person who buys the book actually finish the book, which means they are now more likely to actually benefit from the words that you have to share. So just to finish off, just some general things I'd like to point out. This kind of quick checklist thing to go through. I think you're ready for it. So the first thing, do your best. You got to make. I think you got to make the lead magnet even more specific to identifying, not just identifying what the specific problem is that this is going to solve, but what's the specific solution that's going to be offered. So for you, the solution that you're providing, it's going to be like, the seven power habits. But a lot of times people will make this mistake where their lead magnet, it's too broad or too informative. So it's got to be one thing. Like, what's the one problem that these 7 steps will solve? A lot of people, they want the magic pill to solve the problems. And when you are trying to promote this, that's what that has to do. You have to be promoting it as though this is the one pill, the one thing that's going to solve this problem. But the pill is the 7 steps. So it's like, this problem is going to be solved with these 7 habits, with this framework. Because, people want the magic pill, sell it to them. That's what they want. Another thing, you got to make sure, so speak also to the desired end result. Because I've seen stuff that says the 5 phases to being closer with Jesus in your family. This might seem like an end result, being closer with Jesus in your family. But to the person who's like kind of reading that title, it isn't really speaking to an end result. Like, what does it mean if Jesus is closer in your family? Like, what would the mom or dad that's going to download that want if they want Jesus to be closer with their family? Is it to feel closer with their spouse and their kids while also feeling closer with Jesus? Do they want to have deep spiritual conversations that allow for more growth and depth in their relationship with each other? So you got to ask yourself those things, like, what's the specific result? So for the 5 phases example, it could be titled something like the 5 biblical phases or 5 biblical steps to having deep spiritual conversations with your family while also growing closer to them and with Jesus. That sounds way more attractive because it's got that specific end result tied in there. And so what's that end result going to be for those who go through this lead magnet? And then so now the last thing, you should make sure that the content can be consumed easily and quickly, which is definitely done here. But it's got to also be providing that good value. So, multivitamin, you can pop a multivitamin and it gives you all the vitamins and minerals that your body needs. Ideally, we should eat all our fruits and vegetables, but when people can't, they want to consume something quickly. And that's definitely where it's going here. But like I said, it needs a little bit more meat and potatoes. So I think this could easily be like a 10-page PDF. You got the first page is the title. Second page is the story and the journey. And then you got 7 pages, which are each of these power habits. And then the last page is telling people like, hey, if you want to know more on how to do this, go to this website, get this book. Like, literally the last page could just say that. If you want to know how to do this, go to this website, get this book. And boom, I think like right then and there, like you said, like, learn simple habits. I like how even simpler than this, even it could just be blank white page, big arrow pointing to the book, like just medium-sized text above it. If you want to learn the how, go here. So I think with all of that, you will have yourself a very hot lead magnet here. I was trying to think of how to, terms to go with fire and power there. I was like, or flame. I was like, hot works. But anyway, brother, I hope I didn't overwhelm you with too much of the stuff going on here. I'm gonna message you right now saying I just got done the video. Just gonna upload it to YouTube and send it your way. But yeah, brother, hope you enjoyed it. Let me know if you got any more specific questions of things, and I'll be here.